Hello and welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. My name is Rich Natoli, your regular host of the show. Glad to be back, and tonight's going to be awesome because it's one of the guys that I look up to as a fisherman. Captain John Halkias will be on in just a couple of minutes. Want to apologize for the late start to the stream. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't know about that. Got a phone call for business, had to pick it up. So John and I got to take the call together. So thank you for sticking in there. We're going to jump really quick into this. As always, I want to start off by saying, make sure you are supporting your local shops and businesses, whether it's me as a real estate agent in Southeast Pennsylvania, or it's Great Bay Outfitters on Radio Road in Tuckerton. Paul and his shop are sponsoring this show. Great shop. I say it every week, but it is my kayak shop. It's where I go. If I'm fishing in southern New Jersey and I need something, I'm still going to Great Bay Outfitters. That's if I need something for the kayak, that's where I'm going. And really, they got great products, but it's really the people there. So Paul is awesome. I would consider Paul a friend, but the people that he employs they just do a great job. So if you're looking for anything, head down there, tell him I said hello. And if you need real estate, give me a call. Number and all the contact information is at the beginning. For those on the podcast, you can just look me up at richardnatoli.com. And if you can't spell my name, it is in the image here, right underneath, richardnatoli.com. All right. With that said, we're not going to wait around. We're going to bring onto the stage right now Captain John Halkias. John, how you doing?
Rich, I'm doing good. And let me tell you, great intro. And by the way, I've never been to Great Bay Outfitters, and certainly they don't sponsor anything I do, but that just the opening sequence, the store looks amazing. It just looks amazing.
Yeah. And Paul is one of those people. Actually, Paul is in the chat right now. He is one of those guys that's never satisfied. So it's probably changed 3 times since then and gotten better every time. An interesting thing about him is he texted me last year, well, a couple times. He's done this a couple times with different products, and he has said, I'm thinking about doing this. What's your thought? He's asking me because I'm pretty well tuned into the kayak fishing community in New Jersey. And I'm like, yeah, but what if you did this? And he'll take that and he'll run with it, and he'll come back. And the one time he's like, I'm thinking about these brands. And then he comes back, he's like, yep, just signed it. We have, he made the decision that his customers needed different options for kayaks, and he just signed the agreement, and all of a sudden there's new kayaks in there. So like I don't think people realize it's not a little thing to sign up with a new brand and just bring them in. Like, that's a big decision. And look, he's a good businessman, but he's focused on what people want and need, and he's just trying to fill every gap.
Well, I got to tell you, can they fill in the gap where guys with sore butts get a more comfortable seat on those kayaks? Because I did it once with Skinner, and oh my God. First of all, Skinner's an animal. We were out there for like 8 hours, which if you've never been on a kayak is probably too much time to be out on a kayak. And all I can remember is I had like 150-mile drive back home. This was down in Florida. He's on the southwest coast, and I'm on the east coast. And the entire way, my butt was killing me. I don't know how he sits on that dang thing so long.
Well, I'll tell you this. Part of it is it depends on the brand. I think you were on a Hobie. Some people love Hobies, and some people are like they get what's called a kayak. The brand is Kayak Cushion, and they'll put that on there. I have an Old Town, and I love my Old Town. And look, I'm biased. However, I will literally sit on that seat all day. I won't stand up unless I absolutely have to. I just sit there, and it's like sitting in a recliner. I love it.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
But yeah, actually, Paul, pick up Kayak Cushion if you don't have that in the shop right now. That is a great product. I've never looked for it in his shop because my seat is so comfortable, but it's a great product. We'll have to get you out down at Great Bay sometime. You'll have to go for the little Fluke.
Yeah, well, yesterday was opening day in New York, and I think we cornered the market on Little Fluke. So
Did you?
I don't know if we need to travel down to South Jersey to catch Little Fluke.
So, it's funny. I was going to go, I was dead. I've been waiting a long time to go for Fluke, and nah, the weather was just not good. Everyone that I have seen has said it was just a really tough opener. Doesn't mean that there weren't some really nice fish caught, but it was just a tough one. The weather's been terrible, a lot of rain. And it's not, look, at least it's not a really cold rain, but a lot of rain. So the salinity is dropping in some of these areas that you're traditionally looking for these in the early season. And yeah, I think a lot of people just struggled.
The wind was bad yesterday too, which is interesting because both Windfinder and Windy, at least here in Eastern Long Island, were reading 5 to 10 mile an hour winds, and it was a legit 15 to 20 by about 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And we're lucky we have the trolling motor on my boat, but a lot of our friends who were fishing near us in their boats, they were all chicken rigging with 8 to 10 ounces, and we were all saying the same thing. Where the heck is this 5 to 10 they were talking about?
Right.
It's not here.
Yeah. And that just makes it difficult because, your drift speed is critical. You can't just be flying over. And I don't know that I could fish with an 8 to 10 ounce weight. I just don't know if I could do it.
No, I don't even know the last time I've gone above 4.
Yeah.
Personally, only because I when fishing on my boat or one of my friends' boats, we all have trolling motors. Everybody talks about it as a game changer for blackfish and bottom fishing,
Yeah.
where you're traditionally anchored. But I don't know if I run a trip where I don't have to put it down at some point to make the drift conditions perfect.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the topics I wanted to bring up because there's a lot of variations on it. Now, what Skinner says is what a lot of people say. This is how fast I'm going to drift because Skinner says. But I wanted to see, dive a little bit deeper into it. So what is he says, what, 1.2 miles per hour to
He says
1.7?
0.7 to 1.2, but I
Yeah.
don't believe that. I think, and we've talked about this before, Rich, because your South Jersey guys, my good friends Nino Verso and the good group at Team El Nino, they don't believe in that either. And I strictly believe in being as vertical as you can. And sometimes the drift conditions are slower and the natural presentation might be 0.2, 0.3. And sometimes, there are certain spots that we fish where during the peak tide, it's 1.8 to 2.5. That's just the way the tide runs there.
Right.
And drifting 0.7 to 1.2 is not going to really help your drift condition. If anything, your boat is going to be moving slower than the natural drift speed, and your lure is going to be consequently running ahead of the boat. So I believe in matching the drift speed, whether it's fast, whether it's slow. He and I also disagree about during slack using the trolling motor to cover ground. I'd rather fan cast and bring it back to the boat, because when you're creating that artificial drift, you're actually scoping out a lot, because if the natural drift is 0 or 0.1 or 0.2 and you put it to 0.7, you're just scoping out your line. So having said all that, who am I to say this when he has a far better track record of catching fluke than I do?
Right. Well, yeah, but it's one of those things that I think it's a legitimate point to argue, though, because it's not actually proven any way. One thing that I've always disagreed with, and you've mentioned it 3 or 4 times already, is the scoping. I actually don't have much of an issue with scoping, and the reason that I don't now, it's for a different reason. Scoping, it does mean that I'm not going at the right speed. So to me, that can be an issue. However, I just changed my presentation, because to me, scoping, the biggest concern for myself is not the speed that I'm going, but the presentation on the bottom. So my dropper loop is now a foot closer to the bottom, right? So if I'm jigging, I'm basically pulling horizontal, which means I have to do a bigger swing on that to get it up and off. So I just kind of changed my presentation. But there are times where I will just let it scope. And you don't run into this out where you're fishing on your boat, but in the backwaters, I may go from 5 feet to 17 feet back up to 5. I'll just let it go. I'll just let it scope all the way out, and I just change the jigging, to cover it. But who knows? I could be
What
dead
were the
wrong.
reports in your shallow areas? Because we were fishing yesterday in the deeper waters of Peconic Bay, and it was a tough bite. A lot of sea robins, a few short fluke, but not the fluke life I was hoping for. But then we got reports that guys were catching in Shinnecock Bay, that were catching in Moriches Bay, which last year those were like the two best places to fish all year.
Yeah.
The ocean didn't really get a bite until late August into September, and those shallower bays that normally would have their little run, and that bite was on for most of the summer. I mean,
Right.
I went into first time I ever fished Moriches was I think in August, and it was on fire. And then Skinner and I went into Shinnecock with a charter in either late August or early September, and it was still producing a ton of fluke, which is really an outlier. And the ocean, until near the end of the year when we finally got some north wind, didn't produce. So I'm curious if you heard reports like what I heard, late yesterday when I got back, and then today that the guys fishing the shallows actually didn't do that bad yesterday. And I think most of us that fished the deeper bays didn't do quite as well as we hoped.
Yeah. So I didn't see any really excited reports at all from the New Jersey people that I've seen. I've seen a lot of this person caught a couple short. Now, most of these are backwater, so it's different than what you're fishing.
You're talking about like those old Sea Money, if you remember when Sea Money did all those South Jersey, Philly area videos where he's in that marshy area.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of it was back there. There were a lot of people out in the Raritan Bay, and I didn't see any great reports from there.
And that's a deeper bay.
That is a deeper bay. Yes.
Because I fished it for the first time for stripers this April.
First time
ever in the Raritan Bay. I've never fished it. I rarely fish anywhere west of like Eastern Long Island. I mean, a couple times a year I go with my buddy Doc to some of the spots, the fluke spots in the Sound, which are like still considered Eastern Long Island, like the Shoreham area, Wading River, Riverhead. Right. But otherwise, I don't get much west, other than, if I go on a party boat down in, like I've been on Tom Daffin's boat, a charter boat down in South Jersey. Obviously, I've done trips to Maryland and Rhode Island, but otherwise, almost all my fishing is centralized here in Eastern Long Island.
Okay. So I will say that. So the Raritan Bay is most, I would say, and I fished a lot of the coast, I would say that it is probably the best striped bass area in the country. Now, with that said, it has not been that this year. It has not been what it has been in the past. I'm talking 50 plus inches and 14 feet of water in the river,
right.
In any of the rivers, but it does have up near, what is it, South Amboy and that area. You do have these really nice channels that go through there, and I love going for fluke there. And it has just expansive, just flat areas where all of a sudden you'll just have, a dip of 5 feet, and that's all you need, because now you know where the bait's flowing through. So that's a great place to go. If you want striped bass, though, I mean, that is definitely where I would go first, especially in a boat. Yeah, from shore it can be difficult. It's so shallow for a while, but I mean, they send their cargo ships through there, so it's got depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the reports that I've seen, even the people that went out front into the ocean, they weren't great. I did see some nice pictures of fluke, 2.5, 3, 4 pounders, 5 pounders, 6 pounders. I think around 6 was the biggest I saw, but it was a report like, 6.5. I think it was 6.5 pounds, but only 2 of us caught any fish all day, and the rest were shorts.
Right.
So
I would take that yesterday.
Yeah. I'll take anything at this point. I'm heading out, and I'm going to head out this week, and I'll take some shorts to start, but deep down inside, I'm going to want one of those This
Yeah.
want something good.
Well, I'm going to be fishing on a buddy's boat in Shinnecock Bay on Wednesday, so we're going to target bass and fluke. And I got a couple of reports sent to me that a decent amount of fluke were caught in Shinnecock Bay yesterday. So that gives me some hope that, because I put up a video today that I really went back and forth on whether I should even publish it. Everything that can go wrong went wrong. The camera, we had one drift where we got 2 fluke, and the camera decided to just spaz out. It was like, those back in the 90s when kids were having seizures watching Japanese cartoons.
Yeah, and like Max.
That's what this felt like. It was. Yeah. It wasn't like there was audio. It wasn't like when you accidentally put the camera in time warp mode, but it was like seizure inducing. And I'm like, Murphy's friggin' law. Like the one trip where we had 2 fish and the camera goes crazy. And then I put the camera on ultra high resolution, so everything was zoomed in.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, we got to, in addition to the fishing, we got to, I guess, work through those early season camera pains too.
Yeah, I was talking to my daughter today about that. She said, when you go out, are you going to do a video? I said, well, I feel like I should.
You should.
I was like, but I don't know where all my stuff is. So I was running around right before this, looking around to see where all my camera equipment is and everything. And I'm thinking, I haven't charged these batteries in a year and a half. So I may not be filming this week, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find, at least.
It only takes a couple of hours to charge those batteries, right?
It's
not like you need 2 weeks notice to charge them.
But if they're still good, they're
going to be okay.
Where I found them? I found them in the garage though. So they've been freezing and heating up, 100 degrees down to like 20 degrees. So we'll see. But here's my question though. Are you using GoPros?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I can't stand I've stopped using them. Try the DJI Osmo Action.
So it's interesting you say that because my good friend JT Trolley with Nextra Fishing.
Yeah, I like JT.
He said the same thing to me.
Yeah, you get. I think you get a clearer picture, not quite as good sound on the DJI, but it's also like $200 cheaper.
Right.
So I don't know. I've switched over. I have two Osmos now, and I have, I think, 4 GoPros, which I use as backups and things that I will literally tie a fishing knot around and drop to the bottom if I want to see something. Because if I lose it, okay. And I put it like a 16, megabit or whatever, the smallest.
Right. Yeah.
The ones that I don't, that you used to get free.
Right.
You get
the
like
one
10
where you buy
on.
those packages with all the attachments and they give you a 32 megabyte or gigabyte card instead of anything that, and for those of you guys that have never really tried to film like a full day's worth of fishing, you need a lot. Like I use a 256 gigabyte card.
Yeah.
And in like 5K, I only get 10 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say you're using that card. Yeah,
you're using that card.
Yeah,
people have to understand. See if this shows up. Is how many of these external drives we go through. These are 4 terabytes, and they last. This one was from 824 to 1024. They last a few months because you can't like download your clips onto the computer because unless you have a 3,000 terabyte computer, which I don't think exists, you will run out of disk space like that.
Yeah, and those things are like $100 a pop.
I have a whole.
I think I have 6 of them around me right now. Yeah, and I got some bigger ones that, they're 6 terabytes, but they don't last. And that's the worst thing. So I work with my computer, and I do my video editing, so I have to like put it on and take it off right away because literally one day of filming takes up the entire computer.
Right. Agreed.
Well, try the Osmo. I do recommend. I recommend them. They're really good. They are, and they don't have that overheating problem. I don't know if you've ever had that.
I've put my GoPro in the food cooler on trips to cool it off because it just shuts off from overheating.
Sound. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Try talking again. Let's see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me? How about folks? I can hear you guys.
Somebody in chat tell me if it's him or if it's me.
Yeah.
I see my brother in there. He'll probably chime in.
Doc is on there too. We can hear him. Yes.
Oh, they can hear you, and they can hear me. I can't hear you. Hold on a second. All right, give me 1 second. Let's just pause this for 1 second. I'm gonna switch off to different.
Oh, Nino's on. I see Doc's on. There's James Flynn, David Cohen. There's your son, Stephen Duda. Any relation to Lucas? Probably not. Can tell I'm a Met fan. Nino, that's the first place Mets, in case you're wondering. Of course, I'm talking to a whole bunch of people who are probably from South Jersey, so I'll probably get any of those subscribers.
I don't know what you're saying, but it's probably not good for me, right?
No, it's not.
Oh my God, I can't get it to work. All right, it's your show, John. You keep going, and I'll get in here somehow.
Yeah, I know. Why don't, if anybody has a questions, I'm looking at the comments now. While Rich figures that out, if somebody wants to ask a question, yeah, it's just me. Normally I can filibuster. And again, this happened once when I do a live stream periodically with JT, and he couldn't join once. And when you're doing this by yourself, you quickly realize it's not easy unless you have somebody to feed off of. So
all right. I'm just going to say this real quick. Right. I'm actually going to jump out and jump back in because I can actually hear other sounds on my computer, but I can't hear you. So everybody, I'm sorry, but I will be back in a moment. Yeah, John, it's your show, man.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
All right, we're taking over Fat Dad Fishing now. So do I have any gulp alternatives? I don't. I will say that yesterday, the boats we were fishing near that I actually asked if they had keepers, my good friend Bob on his Robalo, they had a 22-inch keeper and they caught it on squid and spearing. So that's my alternative. Somebody had mentioned to me recently that there's a new product and I should try it. And for the life of me now, I can't remember the name. But you know, it seems like every couple of years there's a new fad that comes out. There's a new product. I remember when Z-Man, a lot of people were saying, well, that's more durable, but you know, I don't know if it had the same scent and attraction for Fluke that the Gulp does. There was that other product on the Fluke fishing page. They were giving it away, but everybody was complaining about it, especially complaining about how it stains the boats. Oh, you know what? M&M Fluke bellies. That's not really a Gulp alternative, but it's actual Fluke belly. Can you hear me now, Rich?
I got you, man.
All right, good. That was very difficult, and yes, we did try to take over the show while you were gone.
Well, it's going to be easy. I mean, everybody who knows you knows that your channel is about 7, 8 times the size of mine. So if there's anyone that can talk to a crowd, it's you.
But so seriously, I was saying when you're doing this solo without somebody to feed off and bounce off of, it's really difficult. You really like just start rambling on in an infinite loop without saying anything.
Yeah.
So you missed a lot of that. Okay. But yeah, so the M&M, I'm just answering a question about a Gulp alternative. Yep. I had on my boat a group of guys that brought the M&M Fluke belly one time, and the results were great. And I don't know why I haven't used it more. But there was a double digit caught by the guy using it, and then he gave a couple pieces out to some of the other guys on the boat, and they wound up with, I think, an 8-pounder and a 9-pounder. I have that video up from like 2 or 3 years ago, but it really seemed to work. And since that all happened, I've gotten friendly with one of the co-owners of the company, Mitch Goot, good guy, fisherman. Despite having a full-time job in the insurance world, this guy probably fishes 100 days a year. So he's out there fishing and testing, and it's definitely a product I've seen work. And I no affiliation with them other than having seen it work firsthand.
Do you have an affiliation with any? Like, do you like Gulp or any of those?
No. But I found out this year by accident. So there's a program that Pure Fishing. So Pure Fishing is the parent company of Penn, and Abu Garcia, and a number of other companies. I found out that I've been in their guide program for a while. That's an invitation only type of guide program. Skinner, recommended me, and they send you an application. It's like legit. You got to fill it out. You got to show all your social media, and then they decide whether you're accepted or not. And if you're accepted, you get 35% off all their products. So I can get my pen reels for 35% off, as an example. And then for 2 weeks every December, they have a 50% off store-wide sale. So I've been in this program 3 years, and it wasn't until this year that I realized that they also own Berkeley. So when that 50% off sale came, I ordered about $400 worth of Gulp to carry me through the year. But the only affiliation I have is with my rod builder, VRC Rods. We have a Jigging Jerks line of rods out, made in America, American blanks, not 100% American made, because you just physically can't buy some of the smaller parts on the reel on the rod. In America, they're just not manufactured here, but the rods are 100% made in America, so are assembled in America, and the blanks are 100% made in America.
I think that's important. I say go local. Hey, go at least stay in the country if you can.
Well, and it'll be interesting too with the tariffs.
I know.
The knock on my rod always was how expensive it is. Mm-hmm. It might not be so expensive anymore if the Chinese rods are taxed at 100% or whatever the number is. I keep seeing different numbers, 95%, 125, whatever it's going to be. It might be cheaper.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I do want to point out, if you're going to spend money on something for fishing, make it the rod instead of the other stuff. And I bring it up almost probably every stream, but that's the most important thing that you have. The line. Look, if you like this and you like that braid, or you like the other braid, they're all probably pretty darn close to each other. But a cheap rod versus a really nice rod, there's no comparison. There's none. There's absolutely none. Like, I have rods that I like that are manufactured just regular off, come out of the factory, and I like them. But then I go back to these custom rods that my grandfather made 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I still prefer to use those because they're better. And those are like 40-year-old blanks. God, I'm 51, and I was getting them when I was like 10, 12, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And, there's a big difference.
Just to go back, because somebody had asked me that question about the alternatives, and David Cohen makes a great point. I forgot about this. Those M&M Fluke bellies are not allowed to be sold in New Jersey. It's because they are actual Fluke bellies, and whatever the New Jersey equivalent of the environmental conservation group there, the regulatory group, it has not approved them for sale. They are allowed in New York, I believe Connecticut and Rhode Island and some other places, but not New Jersey.
So do you have to, in New York, if you're fishing with Fluke bellies that you're just cutting up, do you have to keep
I don't fish with Fluke bellies for that reason. So I saw Doc join too. Hi, Doc.
Oh, Doc.
Doc's
feeling better.
Under the weather. Again, unfortunately, last time I did a live stream with JT, he was under the weather, and now poor guy, he's under the weather again. But we had gotten stopped years ago. Me, him, and Sweeney were fishing in Montauk. We caught a legal fluke. It was a smaller size. We were having kind of a tough day, and we're like, hey, let's strip it, keep the carcass. So we stripped it. We put the carcass in the ice, used the Fluke bellies, and sure enough, we're turning around Montauk Point to head west towards our home port, and out of nowhere, a DC boat puts its lights on, pulls us over, does an inspection, and we were transparent. We're like, hey, look, we have some fillets here, but we used the Fluke belly, and we kept the carcass. It's 19 plus inches. They measured it. They're like, we're not going to give you a ticket, but you're only allowed to fillet the white side, which is the most ridiculous rule on the face of the earth. But it's absolutely true. You can only, I think it's the white side. I don't remember now, but I think it's the white side. I could be wrong. Maybe it's the brown side. You can only fillet, and you got to keep the other one whole. I don't understand the justification for that. Does the fish stretch if you fillet both sides? I don't know, but they warned us. They didn't write us a ticket. And really, like if clients bring fluke bellies, I don't tell them to throw them away. They're on the boat. If they're going to check, they're going to find them. But it's their responsibility, not mine. I don't want to take the chance. Now M&M though does have some exemption where it's an approved product by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So if you have the package, you're good.
But not New Jersey.
Not New Jersey, and be careful if you're in New York using them. If you're using your own fluke bellies, I can't imagine that they would write you a ticket for that, but it's technically illegal.
Okay.
Without the carcass on board.
I always get nervous about using any of those things where you have to keep the rack on board, and I don't know. And then in a kayak, like I'm just pulling around a dead fish that's bleeding all over, and then it attracts sharks, which is a pain in the neck because then you lose the actual rest of the fillet that you wanted to eat later. I'm not a fan of it, but I'll tell you what, fluke bellies work. They work really well. Fluke strips. You know what else we used to fish with? Have you ever done this? Chicken?
No.
Raw chicken.
Really? For fluke or for fish in general?
For fluke. Yeah, that used to be big, like back in the 70s and 80s, really the 80s. And it was always funny because I'm the guy that I go out fishing and I'm totally fine throwing all the drinks in the same cooler with the fish. I don't care. I'll pull it out. I'll just rinse it in the salt water and I'll start drinking out of a can or something like that. I have blood on my hands. I'll grab a sandwich and still eat, But these people aren't thinking. They're using raw chicken all day. And a lot of fishermen were getting sick.
Right.
Because they were getting salmonella from the chicken because they weren't thinking about, they were doing what I do, I shouldn't do, but do. Yeah. So I remember growing up just reading all about that. And my grandfather, who was a doctor, always saying, well, that's why we don't use chicken on board. You got to be smart. These people, everyone's getting sick. But when we did use chicken, it really worked well.
Well, I'm going to invoke C Money for the second time. I think one of his most viral videos going back 9-10 years when he really shot to prominence in the YouTube fishing world was when he was using bacon. He was he bought a pack of bacon at the supermarket and used that as his bait. And I remember with his scissors cutting it and, putting it at the end of a hook and dropping it in those marshes down there that we were talking about and catching keeper fluke on it.
Yeah. I can see that. Oh, now I want to try bacon. I'll give it a go. Will you ever give it a try out in the ocean?
No, I'm not wasting my. I don't know how it would stay on because there's so much.
I don't either.
Maybe turkey bacon. It's a little less fatty because I'm thinking the fatty part of the bacon, once the hook, digs into it, it's going to rip right through it.
Yeah. Unless it's just for the scent and there's no presentation, you just put it on like a ball. So Heaven and Elle Outdoors is saying she's tried bacon in the ocean. It didn't work. So you know what? If
like that name, it just dawned on me. Heaven and Elle.
Yeah, she's awesome. She was on a couple episodes ago. I'll tell you what. If there's ever anyone to experiment on anything fishing related, it's Elle. She will just get into the weeds on things, trying to figure things out. So I'm not surprised that she's the one who said, yep, tried it, didn't work. It's great. All right. So what's your upcoming fluke schedule looking like? Are you just narrowing in on fluke right now? Or are you still looking at other species? I saw you were squidding the other day.
Yeah, no, it's really slow by us. The bass aren't in yet. The fluke are not thick yet. Luckily, I have 70 dates booked this year for my charters, but they really start heating up in July, August, and then blackfish. That's I have 2 days open in October and 3 days open in November, and every other date is booked. So I don't have a lot of charters, but I canceled tomorrow already because the fishing was so bad the other day. I told, last thing I want to do is take clients out and, have them catching sea robins and no bass alternative. If there was a bass alternative, I could pivot to that. So just going to keep prospecting, wait till the fluke come in. And then I have a bunch of people that told me, hey, when that bite heats up, let's go. So it's just waiting right now, unfortunately. Everything seems to be later this year. At this point last year, May 6th last year, Skinner and I caught like 30 bass in 5 hours. And then a week later, we got 63 bass. And right now we're struggling to catch one bass.
Yeah.
They're just not in here yet. We did a trip with his guys from Tsunami who came up from Florida last Wednesday, I think. And we couldn't even get porgies where the porgy bite normally happens. It was May 1st, so 5 days ago. Usually Peconic Bay is loaded with porgies. That was a struggle. The normal grounds where those big Peconic Bay, like 14, 15, 16-inch porgies are caught, they come in to spawn. Couldn't catch one. We went to our weak fish grounds and got a few porgies there, and then found 4 really small schoolies, nowhere near where we should be catching them. We just tried this spot on a lark and got a few fish. So everything is way behind this year. So
I don't know if it's going to change, though. And the reason I say that is I know people that have caught 50-plus inchers in the surf in South Jersey. So and people that have been in the Raritan, every week and have never said it turned on, but those big fish that they were expecting in the Raritan are south at this point. So I don't know.
We don't get those fish anyway.
Well, that's true.
We don't get those 15-inch fish in my area. We get the fish that migrate through the Shinnecock Canal into Peconic Bay, and those fish are there right now in Shinnecock. So it's just waiting right now. Yeah. So we'll see. I am fishing Shinnecock, like I said, on Wednesday, and we will go from there. We'll see how the fishing is there, and that's also something I could do with my boat. It's a 30-mile run for me to Shinnecock.
Right.
The regular Fluke grounds are anywhere from a few hundred yards to 2-3 miles. So I'd much rather do that. But we'll do what we have to do.
Yeah. Actually, have you got that new boat, right?
Yeah. It's second year with it. Yeah.
I was looking at it like that doesn't look familiar. Again, I was not paying attention last year.
Yeah. It's a really cool boat. It's a catamaran. It rides phenomenal. It slices through waves. There's learning curves with it. Turning is a little different. You do have this thing called snap roll, where if you're in a really tight beam sea, like if you're this way and a boat's passing this way and it throws a huge wake, it's a more exaggerated side to side than a monohull. So that takes a little getting used to. It's a little jarring when it first happens. You're not expecting that. There's a sneeze that happens if the wind catches a wave right. But anyone who's been on the boat will tell you the ride is phenomenal. I mean,
so it's everything you wanted.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you before.
Mileage is fantastic. It gets 2 miles a gallon, where my CV got 1.4. So, yeah. And for somebody who does this now full time for a living, it makes a big difference at the end of the year in how much fuel you're spending.
That's great. I remember when you were talking about it, and you were showing me some pictures, and you said, this is going to be it. You put a lot into, the search. And the last that we talked about it, I think you were just a few weeks out from getting it. And
might have been, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
It was a really. Unfortunately, my boat was built. They changed ownership, the company. And I got the last boat built by the prior owners, and there was confusion on the handover, and they didn't build it the way I designed it. So they had to fix it. And there was a lot of like little growing pains because of that. But I will say the new owners of the company, who were always like the behind the scenes owners, they've been fantastic. The kind of like boat ownership you want, where they stand behind their product. They've gone out of their way to fix things for me. So I couldn't be happier. And I've actually given a lot of people who are interested in that brand. I've told them, anybody in Long Island wants to considering buying one, I'll take you for a ride. Pick the windiest day you want, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
That's great. Because you were telling me about how it can be really tough coming around that point in some of the
weather. That's what scares the crap out of me. I mean, that's like, out of all the things that worry me about chartering, I don't think anything worries me more than taking strangers around Montauk Point, especially late in the day, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you have an outgoing tide, so the tide is leaving the bay and going into the ocean, and you have the prevailing southwest wind, which pushes in, if that wind picks up to 15, 20 miles an hour and you have that outgoing tide, good Lord, it is scary.
Yeah. I've been through some of the, not, I've never been around Montauk Point, but I've been through some stuff where it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do this. And then you just have to trust that you got enough power and you have a quick enough reaction time and you can see where the wave's going to push you. I don't know that I could do that with a charter in an area like that. It's just too much responsibility,
Yeah, and I'm a worrywart too. I'm like somebody who plans everything out well in advance, and it's a running joke with some of my friends about how concerned I am about things. I to this day I don't know if I have like that internal disposition to. I'm not a risk taker, so
yeah.
I'm sure I disappoint a lot of clients who want to fish the ocean, and I'll just say no. We can cancel or we can fish this area, but they're calling for 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, and we're not going into the ocean.
Yeah, and look, I know a lot of captains that will, and there was a guy years ago. He took a John boat, I think like 100 and some miles offshore, and in a John boat, and he was out fishing for like tuna with like this 60-foot Vikings out there, and everyone's applauding him. I'm like, it's not smart. Like, yeah, you did it, great, ballsy, but people die doing that stuff.
We saw a John boat a few years back, 2 years ago maybe, out by the windmills at Block Island, which it was a calm day, but still, that was. And we asked him. He came from Connecticut, I want to say. That had to be like a 15-mile run dead south for him. And I'm like, who's going out in a 14-foot boat like that far?
Not me. Yeah. Now I would go in my kayak if I would go 100 miles offshore with the kayak if I had a mothership there watching, in case something went wrong. And, I think that's okay. Like they drop it off a yacht, they drop that 14-footer. Okay, go have fun. You got somebody there to save you if stuff goes wrong. But I don't know, man. I used to like the risky stuff. And I've seen so many bad things happen. And I've almost had bad things happen to me, and I still don't know how they didn't. I think my brother, who's in the chat right now, just coming in a thunderstorm into Cape May Inlet, no visibility, lightning hitting all around you, 24-foot Grady White, and this is pre-satellite, so it's a compass. And my grandfather's standing next to me. It's his boat. And he's making me drive, and he's just watching the charts and the compass, trying to read it. And he's like, the buoy should be dead ahead. And he admitted later, we're both thinking there's no way it's dead ahead, but it's somewhere close. When we came over a wave, and the buoy was below us. Wow. So as we're coming down the other side, we're on top of this buoy. And this buoy's like, I don't know how, if anyone in the chat knows how big the Cape May buoy was back in the 80s, but we're coming down at it and we almost hit it.
Wow.
I mean, things just go wrong quick.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about it. If we had gone in the water there's no one to help us.
Yeah.
There's no one there, and the boats that were right near us, they wouldn't have even seen it. And there were boats near us, but they're disappearing when you're coming up over a breaker, and there's nothing that we could do. The storm wasn't forecasted, because my grandfather was very safe. He would not go out when there's a forecasted storm. We'd see thunderstorms and we would run away from them to get around them. We go 50 miles in one direction just to go around and not through. And we got caught. I
think anyone who boats and fishes long enough will have stories like that.
Yeah.
I know we back in 2018, we did our annual Fluke tournament here in the North Fork of Long Island, and we were in Montauk, and we had a couple big fish on deck too. We wound up with second and third place in this tournament, and we went back through one of those crazy thunderstorms that popped up out of nowhere. It was beautiful, flat, calm, sunny, hot day, and we were never happier to see land than when we got around when we finally got out of that thunderstorm. It was bad.
Yeah, they can get scary quick, and that's one thing that scares me on a kayak. Sometimes you go out, and I think I told this story before. I went out just on a kayak in the backwater in the marshes, right? Not a big deal. I have my plan, and I launch where I want to launch. I go back. It's a couple of miles, maybe 2 miles, 3 miles, something like that. And I finally get back there. And look, you're pedaling max at like 4 miles per hour if you're really cranking it out. And I probably wasn't. So I finally get back there, drop the line. There are like very few clouds. All of a sudden, thunder and lightning like on top of me. And now I have to go back. I have to go back, and I just turn around. Now I'm going against the tide. I have to go a couple of miles through the intercoastal. Boats are flying by, and a couple of guys stopped. They're like, "If you want to get out," I'm like, "No, I'll just keep going." But I was thinking about it. You got all these carbon rods next to my head. I got lightning rods. I'm laying them down in the back. Yeah, when stuff goes sideways on the water, man, it goes quick. So I get
the Old Town is not. You weren't fishing with the Old Town then, but your Old Town is motorized, right?
No. I was fishing with the Old Town. Mine's pedal drive. So I was pedaling.
Okay. My bad.
Yeah. See, there's Paul in the chat saying that's why you get the EPDL. I could have just kicked back and cruised in at 6 miles per hour on that. Yeah, Paul, I'll get the EPDL at some point. Couple more houses.
EPDL, I presume, electronic pedal drive.
Yeah, it's like a pedal assist. You can either pedal it, you can have it assist you like the e-bikes, or you can just let it go.
Okay.
So, in that case, I just would have let it go and let it just fly me back in real quick. But I get where you'd be concerned. I'm glad that the boat's working out the way that you wanted to, though. But let's talk about, okay, so we're going to go out fluke fishing. What's your advice for people early in the season, with people recognizing you're not fishing the same areas that I am? You're not in the backwaters.
Yeah, I mean, it's so area dependent, Rich.
Just talk about your area. We got a lot of people that fish New York that watch this.
So in my area, typically you look for the bait. They're following the bait, and for years where I fished specifically was known as like Fluke Nirvana. It's where everybody came and made a fish. Peconic Bay. It was home of the big fluke, a lot of fluke. It was almost impossible not to limit 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But then a few years back, it seemed like that big squid run we used to get stopped. And consequently, the fluke stopped showing up in the same numbers. So I would say you got to find the bait. I mean, that would be the number one thing. I know for your area, from what I understand, right, the grassy shrimp on those sod banks, that the fluke definitely feed on that in the spring, and use smaller presentations there. We use bigger presentations because these squid that do come in are big. We did have a good squid run this year, which is why I'm hopeful that yesterday was an outlier and we will get a decent fluke run this year. But, water temps being above 50 and follow the bait.
So that's a big thing. Like, people are talking about the water temps being, at 50, 52, but you still get a bite there. I mean, it's not ideal temperatures, but they still have to eat.
Oh, we've caught fluke back in the days. I've caught them when water temp in the 40s in April when I was blues fishing, with the bucktail.
I pre-fished for fluke in March, before, and off of Staten Island, catching some nice ones down to Stone Harbor, Absecon Inlet. I've done it all, and I think it was mainly just because I couldn't wait, and I was kind of sick of catching striped bass when the runs were that good. I was like, all right, I can't keep just going for the same striped bass, catch and release, and I just wanted to see if I could find fluke, and I caught a lot. And a lot of big ones. I'll tell you what, the big girls are in at this point. We just got to find them and get them to bite.
Yeah.
Now, do you notice that it picks up in the ocean later in the season, or do you find the same early as you do late?
So historically for us, we would start, it would be worth our while to start heading into the ocean kind of like late June, and then it was typically good through September. Last year was the outlier. We had all those south winds for literally months. Didn't see a north wind in 2-3 months, and again, this is not coming from me. This is just coming from people who are better at this than I am. It caused that weather phenomenon, that maritime weather phenomenon called an upwell, where the top of the water column got warm, but the bottom of the water columns stayed very cool. And I noticed that when we were ocean fishing and we did catch fluke, they were cold and lethargic when they hit the deck. And conversely, we talked about this earlier, those back bays that typically start dying out, they stayed hot way past when they normally do. And that could be that those fluke didn't want to venture out into the colder ocean waters. They stayed in the warmer bays. Maybe the bait down there was more prevalent too because of the water temps. But then once we got a couple of days of north wind, it like turned on in the ocean. We finally started getting trips like what we're used to. And that didn't happen till late August last year.
So it means they were there, you know, so they were there. They
weren't there. They stayed in the bays because that bay fishing lasted a lot longer than it normally does, and conversely the ocean fishing didn't start, and those fish migrate out of the bays and go into the ocean. So
so they just they were hanging longer.
So they were hanging. So I don't know what to say anymore other than, you know, we'll play it by ear. We got some experience last year running into the bays from where I am, and if we have to start doing more of that, for me it's the same run. It's 30 miles one way, it's 30 miles west, or 30 miles east into the ocean. So we'll adjust, but you know, and we don't have to deal with Montauk Point if we run into Shinnecock Bay. We do have to deal with the locks and stuff, going through the canal, but that's only slightly frightening for a couple seconds when you're, you know, going through that narrow canal. And you guys have Point Lookout, right? Is that Point Pleasant? What's that body of water where those currents are moving like crazy? I've seen the videos on YouTube.
Yeah, that's where Elle fishes.
What's that area called again? Did I get it right?
Point Pleasant.
Okay.
Yeah, that canal is ridiculous. I've never been through that canal in a boat. I don't know that I'd want to. I've been through the Cape May Canal, which can get vicious depending on what's going through at the same time and what the currents are, but nothing's like that. That's,
you know what the best part of Point Pleasant is, though? It's like all the, how do I do this without insulting half your audience? But all the South Jersey people who don't take gruff from no one when a big boat passes them fast, and they're all like, "Hey, F you!" They're like you watch these videos where people are like screaming and cursing, F-bombs flying, you know, because the boat is going too fast or throwing too big a wake. It's actually really funny. I know it's dangerous. I'm not trying to, you know,
it is funny.
I'm with you.
But I watch those. You know, I love when there's a new one and it's in New Jersey, because I'm like, you know, because they always show, you know, Haulover Inlet and all that stuff. I'm like, I don't want to see Haulover. I want to, you know.
You don't see the Jersey Shore cast rejects though until you watch the Point Pleasant one.
It's awesome. And you know what's funny about it though? You can tell that some of the people that get upset the most are actually the ones causing the problem. Like, you got to slow down. It's like, you're going barely fast enough to maintain. You got to go fast enough
to get.
Yeah, you have to keep moving. And that dude is saving your life, because if he slows down and he gets that current on his bow, he's going to be on top of your little tiny bayliner coming behind his, you know, $180,000 boat. Like, you gotta, as Ellis saying, it's always a bow rider. Yeah. It's always a bow rider. That's
for you. You can probably find a bayliner now for 180.
I know. 180
is cheap now for a boat.
I remember when they were essentially disposable boats back in the day. You know, they were just the, you know, $3,000. You know, the engine cost 4 times what the boat cost.
You can probably, I think their 24s are now maybe 70, 75, which is still really cheap. Yeah. But think about it. It costs what a Lexus costs now.
Yeah, I don't get what anything costs now, man. I look at things as like, you want to get like electric cars, $80,000. What? $80,000, and what's my electric bill going to be? I don't think so.
Well, and
like, that's an entry level.
Your range, that's the crazy, especially in cold weather. And you know, the government shoving it down our throat too. Like all these car makers said, oh, we're going to be all electric by 2035. There's no infrastructure for this. Where are people going to charge when everybody's using electric cars? You got to roll this out slowly and carefully.
I'm waiting for the electric boats.
It's out there. There's already companies that have electric outboards. They're smaller, but now they're designing larger ones. There was a video on YouTube of a fully electric boat. It's out there. And listen.
No, I mean the mandates for them.
Oh, but if the technology improves where it's worthwhile, why not? Who wants to pay for gas? Who wants to drill but it has to work. And you can't just shove it down people's throats when, right, in the wintertime, you can go 150 miles. As somebody who drives to Florida every year, I can't imagine having to stop, 10 times and wait 45 minutes just to go another 150 miles. It makes no sense.
Yeah. I don't get it. I don't have anything against electric cars if people like them. But
yeah, neither do I. It works for some people. Listen, if your daily commute is 10 miles each way and you can just plug in at home and for 2 hours and get back up to do that commute, why not?
Yeah. My problem with the electric boats, like the bigger boats, like kayaks, fine. Yeah. I think they're great. And I would prefer an electric trolling motor to a gas thing on a kayak. But how many times, look, if you need gas, like you run out of power offshore, you're done. You're done. My brother's saying in the chat, offshore charging stations. That would be hilarious.
Oh my God.
But I mean, think about that. Think about the range, like what you wouldn't be able to do safely anymore because so much can really impact that. I don't know, man. We'll see if it happens.
The one thing that makes sense that nobody talks about is the combination where you have gas as a generator. So Ram announced that like 2 years ago that was going to be their new electric Ram truck, that it was going to have a Pentastar, their V6 engine, just to act as a ostensibly a diesel generator. It's going to be gas, but same thought. And you would never have range anxiety because once your electric power disappeared, the gas motor wouldn't power the wheels. It would power the electric motors until. So that to me is the most sensible thing. But nobody's doing that. Instead, they're all building these fully electric cars that right now in 2025 at the top ones, optimal conditions will get 350 miles. But most of them are real world 200-mile vehicles, and you're going to charge up way before 200 miles because of range anxiety. I don't know why more manufacturers aren't going into that generator route, but that to me makes the most sense.
Yeah. Well, electric could never work for me because I'm driving, 200 miles plus in a day just to go fishing.
Yeah.
Just for a fishing trip. I throw the kayak in the truck and I'm going 120 miles each direction. And that's if I stay in the same spot. I don't make any side trips. Just as a realtor, I was telling one of my clients that she's like, oh, it's tough to get a hold of you today. I was like, I put over 160 miles on the car already. It's only 3:00, 2 days last week. So I don't know how I do it with an electric car.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
what about electric reels?
When you're hauling stuff too, you also lose range. The more weight in the car, you lose range. Yeah. Forget about towing a boat with an electric car. Your range is non-existent at that point.
Yeah. I think the two things that I really like for electric in fishing is the electric reels and the trolling motors. I'll stick with those for now. I'll be the old dude, as was mentioned in the chat. We're about ready to get our golf carts as we go to our over 50 community. So we better get on board with it.
We bother my friend Rick all the time about the electric reels that he loves going for swordfish down in the Keys, and I'm like, oh, what's that fight like? I don't know. We use electric reels. It's like, how is that? I don't know. I get it. Like if you're tile fishing, do you really want to reel up 1,000 feet? But at that point, I don't know. And look, I use a trolling motor and all this other stuff. But the actual fight with the fish is still mano a mano or mano a pescado. It's not, an electric reel doing all the work. But
yeah, I've never used an electric reel.
Yeah,
I don't think. I don't see. I honestly don't see the point. I could see the point if I went out, let's say tile fishing. I could see the point, but I can't see the point of starting the day with it. Like fish until you can't fish and crank that reel anymore, and then I could see you switching over because you've already taken that long run. You've already paid the money to get out there. It could still be fun, but you can't tell me it's as much fun and as much of an accomplishment if you're using an electric reel. It's just not the case, and that's why my understanding is world records cannot be placed with an electric reel.
That's what I confirm or deny that. I've never thought about that question, but that would make sense if that were true.
Yeah,
just like you can't rest your rod on the gunnel if you're fighting a fish; it won't count towards a world record.
Yeah, yeah. We got their recommendation for dynamite in the. I'll pass on that. All right, so we're coming up to the end of our hour. I can't
believe it's been an hour, Rich.
I know. It happens all the time. Like, and what people don't know is we were talking before this even started too.
But to be fair, we only spoke for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we didn't even. It was more personal stuff. We didn't even once say we're going to talk about this today.
Right. We could talk forever, and I did. A couple of years ago, I was supposed to go on a charter with you, Billy Ackerman. I don't know if you remember Billy. So Billy invited me to go, and then we got blown out. And then we were going to go again. Billy invited me again, and then we got blown out. I'm like the bad luck of the thing, and I'm really hoping to get up there. I'd love to get up there and fish with you, but I also want to meet like your crew. So anyone who hasn't checked out, I'm sure 99% of people have, but Jigging Jerks Fishing on YouTube. Talk about a bunch of people that just have fun. Like, you guys are nuts. I mean, you guys are nuts, and I love it. You did the one live stream with me with multiple jigging jerks on there, and I just got out of the way. Like, I didn't even have to talk. It was just you guys having fun. And that's the kind of fishing I love.
Yeah, I mean, look, half the fun of fishing is the joking around with your friends, the ball busting. It really, like, Sweeney went fishing today, and he sent Doc and I. He's still down in Florida. He sent Doc and I a text message, picture of him heading out on his boat, and he says, "I really miss you guys."
Yeah,
because half the fun, like we bother Doc about how many rods he brings, and it's just inane, stupid stuff, but it makes the trips fun. And then if you catch, it's only bonus. And look, I had my subscriber trip yesterday, my subscriber member trip from my channel, and we didn't do well, but these guys were fantastic, and we were joking and busting. I've never met, well, I one of the members I had met before, even though I didn't remember that. But we were just ripping on each other like we were lifelong friends, and it was such a great trip for that. Like, that's my memory of the trip, not the not catching part.
Yeah, one of the best trips I've ever had was redfish charter in the Chesapeake. We didn't catch a fish all day, and we were out there. We went well over 100 miles just searching them out and trying for them. And I don't even think anybody had a bite or a hookup at all. Best trip ever, because everybody just had so much fun hanging out with each other, and we didn't all know each other well. A lot of people had just met each other for the first time. For me, that's what it's all about, and that's why I do enjoy watching your channel and others like that, because it's look, for me, it's more about having the fun, and then you also get to learn a little bit, if you pay attention. But I love the ball busting. I mean,
Doc is saying in the chat that we loosen his drag all the time, and oh boy, not only do we loosen. So can I tell a quick story?
Of course.
One of my last pranks on him, Doc, don't get mad at me for telling this. So, we had placed a big order with Delaware group, E&S Bucktails, Sean Halkias, great group of guys down there. They make their own bucktails, reasonably priced too. I think it's $1 an ounce. So we all put in a big order. Doc's friend did, Doc did, I did. Sean was coming up for Easter to hang out with Todd Mann, and Sean and his wife are good friends with Todd and his wife. So I was supposed to pick up the bucktails. So Doc gave me an envelope with his name on it with money inside, and one for his friend with money inside. And I was going to see Sean. So when I got home, he gave me the envelope, and I'm like, it's sealed, but it's not sealed great. So I managed to open the envelope, and I hand wrote a crazy note from Doc to Sean, about how, thanking him. It started off innocently enough, hey, thank you for the great price. Love the bucktails service. Hopefully I can catch keeper this year because, as you probably know, I'm not a great fisherman. And it got progressively crazier, and it ended with love, Doc, and then like a PS, have you ever thought about starting E&S Pies? So that's the kind of stuff we do. Very childish and moronic, but it makes us laugh.
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be ridiculous. I love it, man. Doc, good to see you in there. Well, we do stuff like that. What people don't realize, and maybe people have caught on to, a lot of the things in every episode that I do of this, I say a lot of the things, probably at least 3 or 4 times, I'm saying something, but I'm jabbing at one of my friends when I'm saying it. And I won't mention that I am. I'll just make a general statement. And every once in a while, I'll get a text and it'll just be like, F you. Like, yeah, so, you're watching.
Just on that note, I left Florida in mid-March. Skinner, Doc, and Sweeney did one more trip after I left. And Skinner starts the video where he does a little intro and he says, okay, here we go, guys.
Yeah.
And, he told me that his video was coming out of that. And that's what I say at the beginning of every Jigging Jerks video. And he said, hey, I'm going to publish the video with those guys. I'm like, am I mentioned it? And he goes, are you mentioned? You might be mentioned once, but you're mentioned in a different way. And as soon as I saw it, I texted him. I said, you took my, he did it. He knows that the only person, it was just a joke for me there. No one else was going to catch that at the beginning of his video.
Yeah, it was for you. I love that. I do things like that. And I think a lot of them aren't caught, but I do things like that just to kind of jab people. And I tend to do it to people I haven't talked to in a while that I know are watching or listening. It's
an Easter egg. It's a hidden little thing that, only it's. You remember Andy Kaufman, the comedian?
Yeah.
He and his head writer would often just do entire bits that no one was in on except the two of them, just to humor themselves.
I love it. Look, if you can do that, then you're with the right crew. Like the fact that Skinner did that and you picked up on it just by watching it and immediately picked up on it. I mean, that's a good crew when you guys can do that kind of stuff and people pick up on it. But I love watching your videos, and I love when all of you are together because it's funny. Although you guys pick on Doc way more than he picks on anyone else.
You don't see the torture we get behind the scenes.
No, I'm sure it's there. I mean,
we've all been banned multiple times for innocuous infractions.
Oh, okay.
Not liking a Facebook post is like a 2-day ban.
All right. Well, okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, Doc, you do a good job keeping it quiet on the videos. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it. And everybody else appreciates it. I had asked people who they wanted to see, and I got a bunch of emails. I got a few comments on Facebook, and several people said to get you and the rest of the guys back on. I said, well, let me just reach out to John first.
See, my propaganda machine is working, Rich.
Yeah, it's working. It's working. I look, there are people all over the place that I personally like talking to. And then I've talked to a lot of people in the past that I'm not reaching out to again. And you're definitely one that I texted, and my wife said, is he going to remember you? And I'm like, I think he will. And I texted, you got back to me within like a minute. Yeah. For people that are wondering, I reached out to John. I said, hey, it's been a while. You interested in coming on? And he just wrote back. He just said, yep, tell me whenever, I'll be there. And, it was that quick. So I appreciate it, and always have a great time talking to you.
Likewise, Rich. And I'm glad you're doing better. And I can't wait to watch a video where you're fishing, not talking.
Well, hopefully I'll have it this week. I'm going to be somehow hitting the water. I picked my day this week. If anyone has any time at the end of the week, during the week, before the weekend, and wants to hit the water in a kayak, just reach out to me. Maybe we can get together. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'll be announcing next week's guest later in the week. And until next week, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.